As the Shem's Baruch, we begin the current Daf Masechtas Yevamos Daf Kuf Yud Aleph. We begin on the bottom of Kuf Yud Amud Beis, 4 lines up on the bottom of the Amud, where the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our Mishnah, which we spoke about, Ketana and Chadeshes. We spoke about their marriages in regards to how we qualify the marriage, and we said that the bia of one of them is not going to exempt the other one, as we just finished qualifying that in the previous Daf. Even if it's the husband was a Chedesh, we just don't know which one is preferable by him. So nothing more is going to continue. So what do we do actually? If one of them is not going to exempt the other one, it actually seems to be difficult how to be able to define what is it that the Yavam should do with that wife. So that's going to be the Gemara's discussion, which is going to take us to a discussion regarding that of how to actually qualify the suffix of the marriage of a Ketana, which is actually fundamentally different than that of a Chadeshes, as the Gemara is going to go in length and to prove that, which we'll go into the next Mishnah, which also goes on to similar type of themes of the previous Mishnahs regarding if the wives are Ketanas or Chadeshes or Ketana and a Gedolah, and regarding a cotton with a Gedolah, and regarding how do we qualify those marriages and their halachas of Yibum. So we begin the current daf, Kuf Yud Amud Beis, falls up at the bottom of the Amud. Says the Gemara, Ketzad Takanosan. What do we do? So, the case of when the person, the one who died, was married to a minor and a deaf mute. So you said that what you do to one of them is not going to exempt the co-wife. So actually, what do you do? Because, as Rashi explains, the Chadeshes, you can't do Chalitza to. So you can't say that both of them are going to remove with Chalitza. And if you're going to do Yibum to the Chadeshes, and you're going to do Chalitza to the minor, which becomes an adult, then actually, by default, that makes the Chadeshes invalid, because when you're going to do Gerish and subsequently, it's going to make Lo Yivne. And so you actually can't do Bia originally with the Chadeshes, because the Bia of the Chadesh is not going to push away totally the Zika, to say there's nothing after that, because that's not a full-fledged biblical marriage. So you can't say that Bia is going to fully reject that of the Ketana. So what do you do actually if doing Chalitza or Bia with one of them is not going to resolve the one with the other one? So then Rav Chizda Omer Rav, Chizda says name of Rav, what you do is like this. Koinis HaChadeshes. You marry, you do Yibam to the deaf mute. Umaytzia beget, and then you divorce her with a get. Why do you have to divorce her with a get? Because the subsequent Chalitza that you're going to have to do with the minor, because you're going to have to do something with the minor, is going to invalidate it, as we mentioned, retroactively to the Yibam that you did with the Chadeshes. So you're going to have to divorce her with a get. And then the Ketana, the minor, which you cannot do Chalitza with her now because she's a minor and you have to be an adult, you wait till you become an adult and you do Chalitza. Obviously you cannot do Yibum because you already did Yibum with the Chadeshes, and in that regards it's like you already did, and you can't do two Yibums. So that's what you do. You do Yibum to the Chadeshes, you divorce it with a get, you wait for the minor to become an adult, and then you do Chalitza. On that, Rav Chizda says, Shema no, we can infer from this teaching of Rav something very interesting. The Ksav Rav, obviously Rav held that Chadeshes, regarding the marriage of a deaf mute, that the halacha is Kenuya u'Mishayeres. The acquisition, you acquire her as a wife, but not totally. There's some in the acquisition that's left over. In contrast, a Ketana, the marriage to the minor girl, is a suffix if it's Kenuya, if it's totally acquiring her, and it's a suffix at the same time, but in the Kenuya, that maybe you're not acquiring her at all. Because both of these women, to say that they're both Kinyan, but not totally, you're leaving over what's called Mishieris, that you can't say. And that you know already from the Mishnah. Because if that would be the case, then doing Bia with one of them should exempt the other one, because they're both the same thing. They're both Kinui Mishieris, so they have the same halachic criterion. So do to one, you'll exempt the other one. At the same time, you can't say that they're both a suffix from the next Mishnah. Because the next Mishnah says that if the Yavam did Bia to the Ketana, and then he goes and does Bia with the Chadeshes, that's going to invalidate the Ketana. Now, or let's say he did Yibum with the Chadeshes, and then he did Yibum with the Ketana, no, that's going to invalidate the Chadeshes. Now, if it would be true that both of them are suffix, so then the first one should be able to remain with him, Memanav Shach, either way you look at it. Why? Because the later one's not going to invalidate her on him, because if let's say they both are full-fledged Kinyan, like it was by the wife of the one that died, so the subsequent one will not invalidate the first one because you already did Bia with the first one. And if they're both not acquired at all, and that's the suffix, either yes or no, black and white, they're not acquired all to the one who died, so then they're not even tzaras. So there's no problem. They're unrelated. Then they were never married to the first husband. You can marry them both. Rather must be that one of them is Kenuyi Mishieres, is acquired partially. and the other one is a suffix, either totally acquired and not. That we know for sure from the Mishnah. But Rav Chisda is saying from Rav's teaching, we learn that which is which. That the chadeshes is the one that's acquired partially, what's called kanui mishiyachas, and the ketana is the one that's a suffix, totally yes or not. That's why the halacha Rav said was that what do you do if, let's say, the one who died was married to a chadeshes and the ketana? So Rav said, since one's not going to work for the other, he said that the chadeshes should be divorced with a get. Why? Because maybe the ketana was fully fledged kaina, which therefore makes her stronger than the chadeshes, and therefore the subsequent chalitza that you're going to do to her when she becomes an adult is going to invalidate the original bia that you did with the yevama of the chadeshes, because if the chadeshes was full-fledged, so then good, you're done already, and that cancels out the ketana. No, obviously that the chadeshes with kanui mishieres, and the ketana is a suffix yaona, as the Gemara explains. Says Rav Chisda, the isag that the chadeshes kanui ben kanui, if you would think to say the other way around. Let's say that the chadeshes, we proved already that you can't say both or both. So one's going to be one, one's going to be the other. If you think to say that the deaf mute is maybe acquired totally, maybe not, and that's the suffix you have by chadeshes, and the ketana is kanui mishieres, whereas the minor girl, she's the one that's a partial kinyan. So then wait a second. Chadeshes regarding the deaf mute wife. Amai kindness of mitzvah get. Why does Rav say the way to resolve this is do yibum with her and then divorce her with a get? As we continue, she could remain with him with the yavam. Either way you look at it, as follows: if she's totally a kinyan, she's like a regular wife, this chadeshes. So she's totally acquired, and then there's no mazika of the next wife, like a regular wife. You do it with one of them, yibum, you're done with the rest. And the ilav kanoyi, and if she's not acquired at all, because it's black and white, so nachas bami, so she's totally unrelated. Therefore, the chalitza of the ketana doesn't do anything for her. She was never married even to his brother. So what's the problem about staying with her? Obviously, it's not like that. Obviously, like the way Rav said, that what Rav Chisda is inferring, that because the chadeshes is kanoyi mashieres and the ketana is suffix or not. And Rav Chitim is going to say, wait a second, if that's the case, so ketana my tam nashatargir b'techlis. How do we understand now the other half of Rav's halacha? He said that the minor girl, you got to wait till she becomes an adult and then you do chalitza. Why? Why can't you initially marry the ketana and do yibum with her and b'teisav gabe, and she could remain with him mamanoshach? Because you're telling me that the ketana is kanuya ve'in the kanuya and the chadeshes is kanuya mashiyas. So fine, if the minor girl is acquired, so kanuya, it's a full-fledged kinyan, like a regular woman. And ilav kanuya, and if she's not acquired to him, it's black and white. So nechreis b'almi, that means she was never acquired to her first husband either, and she's an unrelated woman. So, imkain, if that's the case, so chadeshes. So the Gemara says, and if you're going to say that, you're right. The only problem would be chadeshes b'mat tepuk. But how are you going to release the other yevama, that of the chadeshes? Because obviously you cannot do two yibums, and at the same time you can't do chalitza to a chadeshes. So Rav, when he said his teaching, he was really saying it because he wanted to be misakin both of them. You're right. You technically, if you would do yibum to the ketana, that would resolve it for the ketana, but that wouldn't resolve it for the chadeshes. Now Rashi points out, if you're going to ask, wait a second, the coming Mishnah brings that let's say he was Baal ketana, let's say this exact case with the ketana and the chadeshes. If he did yibum with the minor and then he did be with the chadeshes, the Mishnah says pasul as a ketana, invalidates a ketana. Why would it pasul her? If he married her first, so then he should remove the chadeshes with a get, and the ketana should be able to remain with him a manavshach, like we just said now. And then you won't have this problem about he wants to fix both, because you'll be able to be misakin because you already did yibum with the chadesh, release her, and then you'll remain with the ketana. So the answer of that Mishnah is actually because of a gezerah. You're right. Really, the ketana could remain with him, but maybe if you do the reverse order, when you did the chadeshes first, which by chadeshes is not a full-fledged or nothing, there's mishiyeres, and that's actually how the Bryce explains this later on. That would be problematic in regards to the chadeshes, where you can't remain with her. So we don't let it, even in the reverse case of when the ketana is first, which technically you should be allowed to remain with her. That's why he says pasla as a ketana. But be that as it may, Rav says Rav Chisda, do you see from him that the ketana is kanuya ve'en kanuya and the chadeshes is kanuya mishuyeres, and that explains the halacha why he says that the chadeshes is koines umaytzia beget. It's actually logical because the commentator of Chisda the Rav, the way Rav Chisda explains according to Rav, that he's proving from Rav that chadeshes is kanuya b'shiyaris, is partially acquired, and the ketana Har suffix is different, fundamentally different. It's Kanuya Veni Kanuya. It's either all the way or nothing. Where do we see this? Because it's not in the Brisa. Brisa says the following case. Shnei Achen, if there's two brothers, Nesuyin Shtei Achayos Yisoimis, are married to two sisters that are orphans, that are Ketana v'chareshes. One is a minor, and one's a deaf mute. Meis Bala Shel Ketana, if the husband who's married to the minor dies. So the halacha is, now the one who's married to the chareshes yitz beget. So he has to divorce his wife, the chareshes, with a get. Why? Because the zika of the katana, which is the yevama, makes his wife forbidden on him. Why do you say that? Oh, because his wife, the chareshes, is what's called kanuyu mishayeres. She's acquired, but not all the way. There's still something left over. Now, at the same time, his sister-in-law, the yevama, the katana, maybe is kanuya, which means totally kanuya. That makes his wife the chareshes achayis zikukasai, because maybe the sister-in-law, the yevama, is a full-fledged kinyan, which is falling for him for Yibam, for the marriage that he has that's not full-fledged. So therefore, his wife has to be divorced with a get. Now, the katana, the yevama, the katana, tamtina shetagdol betachlis. He has to wait till she becomes an adult and does chalitza. He obviously cannot do the Yibam with her because she's a chayis girushasi, because ultimately he divorced his wife, the chareshes. Continues the brisa. Meis bala shel chareshes. If, let's say, the other way around, let's say the husband of the chareshes died. So now, the one who's married to the katana yotze beget. He has to divorce his wife, the katana, with a get. Why? Because the zika of her sister, the chareshes, the yevama, is making his wife forbidden on him. Why? Because maybe, and this is what we say, it's kanuy ben kanuy, it's maybe, it says, maybe his wife, the katana, is not acquired at all. It's black and white. And therefore, although he was with her all this time, she's just like a seduced woman. And the chareshes, on the other hand, his yevama, was kanuy, at least partially. So that makes his wife, the katana, into achai zuku kasai. So she's forbidden, so he has to divorce her. And then, therefore, the chareshes, the system of the chareshes, is a sudal oilam, is going to be forbidden forever. Why? He cannot marry her and do yibum because maybe his wife, maybe his wife, the katana, was married to him. That makes her the yevama achai zuku. So there's no zika. And even if, let's say, his wife, the katana, subsequently dies, so there's no more isra achai, it would still be forbidden because of Eishes Ach. Because at the time of the Nefila, she was exempt. That makes her forever forbidden as Eishes Ach, Shalei Makam Mitzvah. And at the same time, so he can't do Yibum, he can't do Chalitza, because she's a Chareshes. You can't do Chalitza for. So she's forbidden forever. Continues the Brisa. Now, but let's say the Yavam violates, and he's Baal Chareshes. He actually does Yibum with the Chareshes after he divorced his wife, the Ketana. So then, listen, lo get v'hutra. So then, okay, then he could give this Yavam the Charesh a get, and she'll be permitted to marry whoever she wants to, memanavshach. Why? What's a memanavshach? What's either way? Because if his wife, the Ketana, was totally acquired to him, so from the beginning, this Yavama was already excluded because of a chaysisha. It's his wife's sister. And therefore, this Yibam that he did to her was like regular znus, which does not make her forbidden to other people. And if his marriage to his wife, the Ketana, was nothing, so that was a good Yibam, and now he's divorcing her with a get, so she can marry whoever she wants to, memanavshach. Says the Gemara, and this is where the Gemara concludes the proof, like you see, like the way Rav Chizda said. If you say chareshes, that the marriage to a deaf mute is kanuyu mishayeres, it's a partial kinyan, and that of a ketana of a mind is kanuyu ben kanuyu, it's either all or nothing. Mishamachi, that's how we could understand the halacha of the brisa. Chareshes, when he divorced his wife, the ketana, and he subsequently did yibum with the deaf mute, we could understand why the brisa said noisin lo geva hutra. He gives her a get, and she becomes permitted. Why? Because you say, what is it that you want? Either way, it's going to be okay. As follows. If the wife that he had originally was the minor, was a full-fledged acquisition, okay. So this woman was already exclusively able to marry whoever she wants to because it's his wife's sister. Now, and he loved Kanuya, and if she was not acquired his original wife, the Ketana, at all, so he did good but now he's divorcing her, she can marry whoever she wants to. But if you say the other way around, if you say chadesh is kanuy ben kanuy, if you say the deaf mute is maybe acquired, maybe not acquired, and on the other hand, ketana, the minus kanuy mishayeres, is a partial kinyan. It's not like all or nothing. We know for sure it's only partial. So then, kibol chadeshes, when he divorced his wife, the ketana, and he subsequently did yibum to the sister-in-law, the chadeshes, amay nice and get for hutra. Why you tell me you give her a get and she'll be permitted to marry whoever she wants to now? Why? You could say that maybe, because we're saying Chareshes, Kunuy ben Kunuy, maybe the Chareshes was fully acquired to his brother. and now his brother died, and it's a full-fledged zika to him. Now, his wife, the Ketana, cannot reject that zika because the marriage he has to his wife, the Ketana, is what's called Kanuya Mashiachas. It's only a partial kinyan. Therefore, that makes that the bia he subsequently does with the Charesha, with the Yevama, Havila bia pesula, that's an invalid bia. Why? Because she's partially his wife's sister. Because again, the kinyan he had in his wife, the Ketana, was a partial marriage. So that makes it a flawed bia. Because you obviously can't do bia with Yibam because it's a bia pesula, because you can't marry her, because she's a achais isha b'mitzvah, a partial wife's sister, because she's only a partial wife, this Ketana. Again, based on what we're trying to say. If that's the case, well, bia pesula loy patra, a flawed bia will not exempt a woman from Yibum. So yes, you'll still have to have a get for that bia, because it partially was a bia, but it's a bia pesula, and therefore she still requires chalitza for the remaining zika. A chareshes you can't do chalitza to. So how could she marry people? How can you say hutra and she's okay to marry whoever she wants? And now the get's not going to do anything because she still needs chalitza. She can't do chalitza. Obviously, it's like the way Rav Chizda said. That's what he wants to prove from this brisa. That's what Rav Sheshes wants. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a raya to Rav Chizda from the brisa. Because I could tell you, Homani, who's the time of the brisa? It's Rav Nechemihi, who's quoted in Perigam Leal on Daf Nun base. That he says, bia pesula, a flawed bia, still, even though it's like it's somewhat a bia, but it's not really great, you can't really do, will be partas mechalitza. Ultimately, you did a yibum, even though it's flawed, it will exempt from chalitza. So that's why it'll let her go. Says the Gemara, if it's Reb Nechemia, well, wait a second. Aim is safe. Look at the end of the brisa. The brisa continues. If someone was married to two orphans, the reason why we're saying orphans is specifically because of the case of the minor. So someone's married to two orphans, Ketana v'chareshes. One of them is a minor, one of them is a deaf mute. Umeis, and he dies. So now there's a brother to two yibum with two women. One's a minor, one's a deaf mute. Says the Brisa, Yavam al Ketana. So if the Yavam goes and does yibum with the minor, and then does yibum with the chareshes, or his brother does yibum with the other one, the chareshes, both of them become forbidden to him. Now, as Rashi points out, although the Ketana, which was done first, Medina does not become possible on him because of the subsequent bia of the cheresh, because Memanavshach. If the Ketana is Knuya, so there's nothing after her bia. And if she's not Knuya, then she's a Nachris Ba'alma, she's like an unrelated woman, you can stay with her either way. Even so, she can be forbidden, as you're going to explain later on, because of Gzer, because maybe you're going to do the opposite. You can do the bia with the chereshes first. And the problem with that is that actually the subsequent bia of the Ketana actually wouldn't validate, because maybe the Ketana is a full-fledged kinyan, maybe not nothing at all, but maybe it is. And then you're going to come to say that also the one that you did first, where in this case would be Chareshes, you remain with, which is not true, it's only Kanuya Umashieres, and therefore you can't really remain with her, so therefore even by the case of Ketana we say you cannot remain with her. So therefore we're going to say it's puzzle. But continues the Brisa. So Ketza Takanasan, so what do you do? So what do you do in this situation, where you did be with the Ketana first and then with the Chareshes, and both are forbidden? So Chareshes Yoitzis beget. Chareshes goes out with a get, and she's going to be permitted in Manavshach. Because if the first bia with the Ketana was Kanuya, so anyways, this Chareshes was already exempted from the bia of the Ketana. And if she was not acquired, so she became exempted with her own bia, and now you're divorcing her with a get. She can marry if she wants to. And for Ketana, what do you do with the Ketana? You wait till she becomes an adult, and then you do Chalitza, as we're going to explain, as the Gemara says. If you say, regarding the first case that we had mentioned before, regarding the sisters, not the case we mentioned before, the case a few lines up, where we said that if, let's say, after this one who is married to the Ketana, which we said he has to divorce his wife, the Ketana, and then we said, or if he subsequently does be with the Chareshes, even though we said he's not supposed to, if he violates and he has be with the Chareshes, so we said, okay, fine, now you can give her a get and she can be permitted in Manavshach. So, why? Because Chareshes, yes, a deaf mute woman is Kenuya Umashiyares, meaning, if you say, like we said from Rav Chizda, that she's partially acquired, and Ketana, a minor, is Kenuya, ve'ena Kenuya, is maybe acquired totally, maybe not acquired at all, and Memanavshach, that the Chareshes, once you give her a get, is going to be able to marry if she wants to. Because either she was a chais isha and she's already released when you did bia with the Ketana, or because of her own yibum, which was beheter, because her sister, the ketana, was not acquired at all. Now, but if you would say the opposite, that the ketana is partially acquired, and the chareshes was suffix totally yet, totally not, then you would not be able to let the chareshes go with the get. Why? Because maybe she's totally acquired, and she was not released as a chis isha, because the kinyan that you did with her sister first, the ketana, was only partial, so it didn't release her. At the same time, the bia that you subsequently do with her will not let her go, because that's a bia psul, it's a flawed, because she's at least a partial achais ishtai. So rather, obviously, that's not a problem, because the Mishnah is v'rabbanai, it's the rabbanan. So what? Shemhachi, that's why we're saying in the Seifa, by the case of the Nachriyais, meaning it's going like the Rabban who say, yeah, bia psula would not let her go. So therefore, it works, because we're saying Ketana is the one that's maybe yeah, maybe not, and the Chareshes is partial. And that's why in the Seifa, by the unrelated women, the case we're mentioning right now, so we're saying that by the minor, we're saying this last case that we're mentioning, Tamtana Shatagta B'Techlitz. That's the part we're coming to explain. It makes sense. You say you wait till she becomes an adult and do chalitza. Now, even the Maman of Shach, her first bia, she was the first one to have bia with, was beheter. And the get you give her is a totally full-fledged get. Oh, but as a gezerah, because the dilma kodma bol charesh is beration. This is what we're mentioning all along. We said that it makes sense because maybe you'll do the other way. Maybe it'll be a case when they can do bia with the chareshes first. And then you're going to come to say they're also that, okay, we could release both of them with a get, just like if the ketana was first, you could do both of them with a get. But the problem is, in this case, where the ketana is last, it's not going to be enough with a get. Because maybe the ketana is fully acquired. And she's falling in front of him, where she was not exempted with the bia of the chereshes, who was first, which was only a partial kinyan. At the same time, her bia also is not going to release her. Why? Because probably bia the ketana, bia basula. It's going to make the bia of the ketana as a flawed bia, why is it flawed bia? Because you obviously cannot do bia to two Yevamos, because that's the issa of shnei batim. So therefore you're going to say that, it's flawed, so you have to wait till she becomes an adult and does chalitza, if you say it's like Drabanan, which that's the whole point. We're trying to reject the rejection. The Gemara went on to reject the Rav Shesha says, no, it would be a Rav like Drabanan, but the Bryce like Rav Nachman. Saying, no, it can't be like Rav Nachman. It must be like Drabanan, because the way we explain makes sense according to Drabanan. But if you say that, no, the way you're trying to reject Rav Chizda's inference from Rav, then no, maybe I could tell you that a Ketana, she's the one that's a partial kinyan. And the Chareshes is the one that's a suffix, maybe yeah, maybe not. And from the ratio that we spoke about by the case of the sisters, that if he subsequently had B with the Chareshes afterwards, that you said, you give her a get and she's going to be permitted. So from there we say that, a Bia Pesula is going to exempt, meaning we said yes, because it's going to be like Rav Nachman. So it's no raya. You could say, not like Rav Chizah said, and still you could understand the halacha that you give her again zimin mutter, even though it's a Bia Pesula, fine, that's okay, because Rav Nachman says zimin preteres. The problem is, but then what do you do with the sefer that we're bringing over here regarding the unrelated women? Why do you say that the ketana requires chalitza? I understand why you're going to remove her from him, because maybe the chareshes that comes afterwards is totally acquired, and it's going to validate her on him. But with a get should be sufficient, because her own bia is going to exempt her, because she did a bia kashera. And even if you're going to consider it as a bia basula, because you have the zik of the chareshes, where you could say it's totally acquired, but ha'amar, but Rav Nechemia says bia basula patra. So what's the problem? Even if it's a bia basula, that will release her. So you're right. Why would you need to do chalitza to her? Rabbanahi. I was Rabbanan. And therefore, since the Rabbanan, they say a bia basula does not part, and after we tam dash talking the teklitz as you see from the Seifa. So Shema Minah. Obviously, if the bread is going like Rabbanan, let's go back to the Reisha. And if they're going like the Reisha, that doesn't make sense. We only were able to reject the Rai by saying it's Rav Nachman. No, you see it's Rabbanan. Therefore, that's a Raya, says Rav Sheshes, to Rav Chiz's point, that it's the Ketana that's Knuya V'Niknuya, and the Chereshes is the Ketana, is Knuya Meshielis. Additionally, Amar Abashi says, actually, Medesha Nami. Says even from the Reisha itself, you don't have to come onto the Sefer. The Reisha itself, by the case of the sisters, also Shema Minah, you could infer the Rabbani. Why? Because the Ketani, we learned regarding the case of when the husband of the Chareshes dies, we said that regarding the Yavam, in Ba'al HaChareshes, if he does be with the Chareshes, so Neslan get Bahutra, he could just give a get and then she could marry whoever she wants to. V'loi Ketani, we don't say by the case of when the husband of the Ketana dies, where we said, okay, so the Ketana has to wait. we didn't say, if that Yavam violates and Baal Ketana, if it does be with the Ketana, Noisna get Bohutra. Okay, give a get and release her. Which he was married to the Chadeshes. He said, no, you have to wait till she becomes an adult. Obviously the bride is like Drabanan. And that's why you cannot release her with a get. Why? Because it's a Bia Basula. Why? Because the Chadeshes is Kenui B'mikta, it's a partial Kinyan, and therefore this Yevama is forbidden because of a Chayis Isha. But from Yibam itself, she's not rejected because maybe the Ketana is fully acquired. And the partial Kinyan of her sister, which is his wife, is not going to reject her. So you're still going to have to do something. So you have to do chalitza. But seemingly, that's a raya to this, that must be like to Rabbanim. So the Gemara, no, Imisham Ha, if that was the raya lo area, that wouldn't be a raya, because you could possibly say like of Nachman. You could say Chareshes, the deaf mute, that since the Leslie Takanta de Teira, since there's no way of a permissible way of fixing her, because you said Chareshes Asur La'olam. So since there's no permissible way of releasing her, so we mentioned when it's a problematic way of releasing her, where he violated and he went and he did even, okay, then that's going to let her go. But that's only because there's no way of saying takanta detera. In contrast, Ketan, by the case in the mind, there is a way, permissible way of fixing her, waiting till she becomes an adult and then doing chalitza. That's okay. So loitani takanta disur. So we didn't say a case of how to fix her in a prohibited manner, but maybe it would be the same thing, and maybe you could still say like Nachman. Maybe actually, if he went and he violated it, bia, maybe it would be bipsul, and you would be able to release it through bipsul. So it wouldn't be a raya that bipsul doesn't work, and therefore that's not a raya, at least from the ratio, but it would be a raya from the seifa. So I'll look at the next mission again, continue on this theme of yibum of minors, similar to the case of the previous Mishnah. If someone is married to two minor orphans, umes, and he dies, and the Yavam does be with the first one, then does be with the second minor Yevama, or his brother does even with the second one as a contingent base. So that's not going to invalidate the yibum with the first one. And the reason for that is because their bia is equal. If the first one's bia was already a kinyan, so she's his wife, and the second one is like a bia of znus. She's not a yavam anymore. The zika was already released. And if she's not acquired, so they're both unrelated to him because they were never acquired to his brother at all. And therefore, as Rashi explains, he can maintain the first one, who is never invalidated on him, but not the second one, because maybe they were acquired. And once he did be with the first one, so it's already Isser Shnei Batim, so you can't be with the second one. But at least it does not invalidate the first one. And when the two deaf mutes, they also have the same halacha criterion. Doing even with the first one, the second one will not make it invalid. Because but Ketana v'chareshes. But let's say the two wives of this one who died, one was a minor and one was a deaf mute. So then Yav Mal Ketana, if the Yavam went and had be with the minor, because of Bal Chareshes and had be with the Chareshes, or his brothers be with the Chareshes, then Pasla Seketana. It will invalidate the minor, which as Rashi points out, that's like because of a Gzeira. Because as we mentioned, Omen Aleph, because maybe it might be the reverse, and you be with the Chareshes first, and although here by the Ketana, Manav Shach, the minor is going to be permitted because since she's the first, if she's acquired, she's acquired. She's not acquired, then she's like unrelated. Doesn't make a difference because the case of when you do the other way, which is the next case of the Mishnah, which is halachically problematic, but Yav Mal Chadeshes, if the Yav has be with the Chadeshes, which is only Knuya Mushiyeres, only a partial Kinyan, then he does be with the Ketana, or the brother does be with the Ketana, then Paslas Chadesh, that will invalidate halachically the Chadeshes, because maybe the Ketana, which we said is Knuya, maybe it's a full-fledged Kinyan, and the Kinyan Chadesh will only Mishiyers, only left over something, and therefore she couldn't validate for her. So therefore, that will halachically invalidate the Chadeshes. Now let's say Bekachas v'Chadeshes. Let's say his two wives, the one who died, one was mentally competent, the other one was a deaf mute. So, Yav Mal Bekachas, if the Yavam first did be with the Bekachas, then it'd be with the Chadeshes, or his brother did be with the Chadeshes. So Lepasas Bekachas, that's not going to invalidate the Bekachas. The Bekachas is definitely stronger. That was already consummated relationship, already finished off the Zika. But Yav Mal Chadeshes, but if the Yavam first did be with the deaf mute woman, then he did be with the fully competent wife, or brother who also has a zika did it with the bekachas, then pasas cheresh can invalidate cheresh because the cheresh is she's only kenuya mishayeres. It's still leaving over something, so there's still some zika over here. So that could still be invalidated with the subsequent be with the bekachas. So too, let's say gedol b'ketan. Let's say one wife is an adult and one is a minor. If the yavam first does be with the adult, because the balketan then is be with the minor, or his brother does with the minor, the pasas gedol, it's not going to invalidate the gedol because she already finished everything off with the yibum. But Yav Mal Ketana, the Yavam first does be with the minor, then he does be with the Gedaila, the brother does be with the Gedaila, then passes Ketana, because we don't know if that's a Kenyan, so therefore the subsequent with the adults is going to invalidate that. And Rabbi Shloimy says, but what you do is Malam Haketana is the minor. What you do is you teach the minor to do Miyun, so that's going to retroactively uproot that she was never married, and then you can maintain the marriage with the Gedaila, because she comes out, she's the only Yavam. And the Gemara actually brings up Rabbi Mishmul. It says, Allah Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas, who's Namayra, he says, Allah Rabbi Lazar of our Mishnah, who's Rabbi Lazar ben Shemua. That's a Tana. And says the Gemara Tzricha, we needed Shmuel and Rabbi Lazar ben Pedas to say, in the prior Mishnah, Halacha like Rabbi Lazar, and so to in this Mishnah, Halacha Rabbi Lazar, where he, in both Mishnahs, different cases, but by both of them he's saying, Malamna Sakatan L'moin, that we teach the minor to do mean, why do we have to say it by both? So the Gemara says Tzricha. Because we only said in the previous Mishnah on Daf Kuf Testament Aleph regarding the case of the sisters where he was married to a minor and his brother was married to the adult sister. And now the Gedaila is falling for him as a mitzvah of Yibam, and he's only having rabbinic marriage with his wife, which is problematic. So there he says we train the wife to do mian so he could do Yibam with the sister-in-law. Yes, because over there, maybe over there Shmuel says Allah Rabbi Eliezer, because he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Yibam. So therefore we teach the wife that's a minor to do mean so they can do Yibam with the sister. Over here, the Kai mitzvah Yibam, where he fulfilled mitzvah Yibam with both of them. Same I would say that no, Shmuel's not going to say Allah like a blazer, rather Tavayu, Lifka Beged. Now, you obviously cannot stay married to both of them, but definitely you did the mitzvah, so just release them with a get. And we don't necessarily train the one of them, the minor, to do mean, because we don't want them to do mean. But the Ashmin Baha, and had we said only in this case, because ultimately the adult is here, is waiting for she's in a state of Yibum already, because she's falling, she fell for Yibum. We just don't know, and therefore we try to do the mean of the Ketana so that he could have a bona fide Likatchila Yibum with the Gedalah. But the prior Mishnah, by the case of the sisters, where the Gedalah is his wife's sister, at least rabbinically, so Loi, I would say no, she never fell for him. We're not going to teach his wife that's a minor to go ahead and do mean so that he can do Yibum with the Gedalah. So tzricha, therefore you have to say both cases, that in both Shmuel says halacha is going to be like Rabbi Eliezer, that Malam Nesakatanish at the moment, that we do teach the Ketana to do mean. Now halacha, the next Mishnah, continuing on this halacha of Yibum with minors. So you have him cotton. If the brother-in-law, the surviving brother, is a minor, Shabal Yevama Ketana, his brother who died, his wife, who's Yevama, was also a minor. So if he does be with her, Yigdulu Zemzeh, so they grow up together. Meaning, if he wants to divorce her, he cannot until he becomes an adult, because the get of a cotton is not a get. So they grow up together at least till they're adults. But if let's say I'd be with the widow she was an adult and he was a minor, so she brings him up until he becomes an adult. Now, Yevamos Amr, segueing into a related halacha, if the Yevama says within 30 days that the Yavam already did be with her, she says, Loi Navalti, says, look, I never had be with the Yavam yet. Now, the Gemara is going to explain that she has a get from the Yavam. And he's saying, I already did be with you, and it's enough with the get to release you. But she's saying, no, we never had bia, which obviously then the get's not going to release her, because that only works on the zika, which only maybe invalidates, but it's not going to go ahead and release her. So Allah is so we force him to do chalitza to her because she's believed, because up until 30 days, that makes sense that a person would hold back and not do bia. So we believe her when she says that there was no bia, and therefore, if you want to release her, it's not enough with the get, you got to give her chalitza. After 30 days, where she says, I didn't have bia yet, and he says, no, we did bia, so he's believed. Because a person would not hold himself back from having bia with his wife 30 days, but she's not permitted, because she did what's called halachically shavya nafshe chaticha d'isur. She's making herself forbidden based on her own testimony, which is saying, but he never did bia, which obviously gets not releasing her, so she needs chalitza. So in this case, it's only mevakshnim and sheyach. We only request from him to do chalitza to her. We don't force him because we presume like he's saying that he did bia. So we believe him, but we request from him to do chalitza to her. Now, but if he agrees to what she's saying that he didn't do bia, and even if it's after 12 months already, it doesn't make a difference. That we force him to do chalitza to her because he has to release her because he already gave a get, and therefore he has to do chalitza. A similar concept of this discrepancy. If a woman took a vow prohibiting herself from her brother-in-law, from her husband's brother, when her husband was still alive, meaning she never had in mind to exempt herself for when her husband's going to die without any children. She just was very angry at her brother-in-law. She said, that's it, I want nothing to do with this man. She took a vow prohibiting any benefit. So if her husband subsequently dies without any children, so we force him to do chalitza because obviously she cannot be married to him because she can't have any benefit. And since she didn't do it intentionally, we force him to do chalitza. But if she took the vow after her husband already died, obviously she has a zika now and she's taking the neder forbidding, so we only ask from him to do chalitza because it's her fault. Now, but if she even had this in mind that she never wanted to do yibum with her and she did this even when her husband's still alive, then and even in her husband's lifetime, it's only mevakshim and the so we only ask from him to do chalitza because that was her fault again because she set this up. The Gemara says, let's say the opening halacha of the Mishnah, where we said that the Yavam Katna did be with the Yavam Katana, the Yigdul Zemzeh, is like Meir. It's not like Meir. Why? Because Tanya Lina Braisa Katna Katana regarding a young boy or young girl, the halacha is Leichotzim LeMesyab and Dibber Meir. Meir says that they cannot do chalitza nor yibum. Why? The katan, he might turn out to be a sagas, where he cannot have any children. The katana might turn out to be an alnus, which they don't qualify for yibum. Yibum is only that if they could have children. So it comes out that if they can do yibum, that they had relations as an erva, which is a forbidden eshazach. So we cannot do yibum. So you can't do yibum. Our Mishnah that says that yiglim says that they continue to have the relationship sounds like not like a meir who says no, you cannot do yibum. You might be having a relationship with an erva of eshazach. Says you can even say the Mishnah like a mayor. Kiyam Meir, when you say the halacha that it's forbidden for them is a gedolah lekatan. If let's say the Yevama is an adult and the Yavam is a minor, or katan legadla, where the Yevama is a minor and the Yavam is an adult. The chad minai, where one of the parties, it would be a bia disruhu. It would be a prohibited bia. The young man to the adult widow, where the adult widow could get punishments for Eish's ach, and maybe the minor is a sagas. Comes out she's having bia to something that's forbidden to her, shalei b'makam mitzvah. So to the other way around, if the yavam is an adult and the minor is the widow, if she turns out to be an alnus, he's having bia with an erva of eishasach. That's where he said, okay, he's concerned for the miyuta, and if it's forbidden. But the case of our Mishnah, where we have a minor boy with a minor girl, even if they're not b'nei yibum, let's say Rameh is correct, where he's a sagas and she's an alnus, the tavai ki'adodin, but at least they're both the same, where there's no prohibition really over here because they're children. The halach is cut neichel nevelis if you have a child eating not kosher. In bezin tum nafrishe, the courts, as the Gemara says later on of Kovidal Menal, they don't have to stop them. So here also, loy amar remain never said as halacha because both of them wouldn't get punishments, and therefore we're allowed to go ahead and say like the Mishnah says, yigdul zemzeh. But the Gemara says, yeah, but the next case the Mishnah says is baal yavama gedoyla. But if let's say the yavam that's a minor has be with an adult widow. So the Mishnah said, Tigad Lena, she could go ahead and bring him up. She's a Gedayla. That would be Einshin of Eshasach. So I remember Chanina Chayzai says, no, Ba, if he says he was Ba al Yavama, he already did Bia, well, that's Shan, that's different. That was already done, the deed was done. It says, yeah, but I could let him come, but you're saying that she should bring him up, which they could stay together, but the Chal Bia, where every Bia, until he becomes adult and we verify that he's not a Sagas, that might be Disru, might be biblically prohibited as Erva Eshasach. So Gemara says, you're right. Ella rather machvart is clear. Must need like Rameir. Obviously, our Mishnah is not like Rameir, because according to him, the case of Bal Yivam Gedayla would not be Tegadlena. It'd be forbidden because we have to be concerned. Maybe he's a sagas and it would be a problem with Eshasach. Now, but the Gemara now asks in the primary halacha of the Mishnah, okay, not like Rameir, but Kari Khan, why don't we recite the pasuk that says the whole purpose of Yibam is lahakim lachav b'shem, to establish for his brother a name, v'hai, and a minor Yavam la brahachihu. He can't do that. He can't father a child. He's not an adult. So my says, yeah, but Amakar the pasuk says Yavama Yavay Aleha. Her Yavam will have be with her, which is called to any type of Yavam. As Taisa points out, it doesn't say Achi Ames Yavay Aleha. It says Yavama, which would include even the cotton. And yes, the ultimate purpose is Lachav Lachav Shem, but as a minor, he could already do Yibam. Rav Ame says, Balav Hachi. He says, even without this, Namila Mitzis Amid, you cannot say that if he was a cotton, that it would be forbidden. Why? Because it says, Mika Midi, is there such a thing, the Ashta Siule, that you're going to tell me, oh, now as a cotton, he's forbidden to the Yavama. Or the Basa Shaita, and later on, when he becomes an adult, Shari is going to be permitted? That can't be. Because V'amar B'yidum Rav, he says, Kol Yavama Shein in the Kar B'shas Nafila, any Yavama that I cannot recite on her regarding at the moment of death of her husband, Yavama Yavala, that her Yavam should be with her, then Harehi Keishas Ach Sheish Laban Vasucha. Then she's like a brother's wife that already has children as if, and she can be forbidden. So therefore, you can't say that it should be forbidden now and permitted later. Because if it's forbidden now, it's going to be forbidden forever. So the Gemara says, okay, maybe say yes, if the Yavam is a cotton, then maybe since she's forbidden now, because a cotton will not be lahakum lachav b'shem, maybe she actually should be forbidden forever. So says the Gemara, no, Amakra, the pasuk says, Ki yeshva acham yachtav. If there are brothers who are living together, one of them dies, etc., which teaches Afila ben Yemechad, if the brothers are there at the same time, which that excludes Eish Achav Shalai Ba'ilame. But it sounds like that if he's Ba'ilame, even if he's 1 day old, that the halach of Yibum would apply, and therefore you cannot say it's going to be forbidden forever, and if it's not going to be forbidden forever, then it's not forbidden even now, and therefore that's why we're saying that Yibum will apply to a cotton, even though right now he cannot be La'achim Shem.